My daughter disappeared for 5 days. What I discovered under that rug changed everything forever." Jack's heart raced as he recounted the muted chaos that ensued after Lucy vanished. 5 days of broken sleep, frantic searching, and doubt clawing at his insides like a coyote at a chicken coop. The garage, typically his refuge filled with the scent of metal and gasoline, had become a prison of anxiety. A sharp wrench clanged against the floor, echoing his internal turmoil. Images of Lucy flickered in his mind. The laughter, the conversations about her future, the dreams they shared. Yet each fleeting memory was now overshadowed by an ocean of despair and questions. What had he missed? Had he done enough as a father? He'd poured every ounce of love into his work, and Lucy, determined to build a better life after the death of his wife. Yet here he stood, feeling like a failure as society bore down on him with disapproving glances. Being a single parent in a town that seemed to thrive on old-fashioned norms weighed heavily on his chest. He glanced outside. The neighbors were quick to offer support, but also quick to whisper. Each pat on his shoulder stung, amplifying the guilt and isolation he felt. Had his unwavering dedication turned into a love so intense it suffocated Lucy's spirit? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing hour, Jack confronted a mental labyrinth of fears and uncertainties. Every clinking tool and sputtering engine became a siren song of his inadequacies. He was a mechanic, skilled at fixing machines. But here he was unable to mend the broken pieces of his own life. What would happen if Lucy needed him to understand her? Needed him to be more than just the provider? What if she never returned? What would that mean for him? For their future? The weight of his failures pressed down, deeper with every dark thought, and then, just as he felt he might shatter, she reappeared. His Lucy, but changed. The relief in his chest was quickly eclipsed by an icy unease. She stood there, a ghost of the girl he once knew, eyes distant and guarded. Jack could sense a canyon had formed between them. Words could not traverse the worn terrain of silence. What had she seen in those 5 days? What had been unleashed inside her silence? As he cautiously settled into the remnants of her room, dust motes dancing like scattered memories, he knew he had to understand. Jack's heart thudded with a newfound urgency amid the remnants of her childhood. A frayed rug beckoned from the corner, holding the promise of secrets hidden even from him. What lay beneath would reveal more than he ever anticipated. A box of letters written by Lucy's mother, bursting with emotion and dreams left unfulfilled. The realization burned deep. Jack faced the climax of his emotional storm, knowing this could either be the salvation they both needed, or the final unraveling of their tenuous bond. But as he lifted that rug, the echo of an unanswered question loomed larger. Would it heal them, or ripple their fragile world into chaos? The letters lay there, fragile and yellowed with time, framed by the dust that swirled in the sunbeams filtering through the window. Jack felt a visceral tug at his chest, as if he were reaching into a shadowy abyss. Each letter was a whisper of the past, carrying the essence of Lucy's mother, their hopes, dreams, and an unanswered longing. The words swam before him, half-formed thoughts that invited him into a world he had yet to explore. Jack picked them up. The familiar script felt both comforting and abrasive. The letters spoke of adventures yet to come, and assurances that he had not managed to bestow upon Lucy after her mother's death. His fingers traced the lines, and with each revelation, threads of guilt tightened around him. Had he robbed his daughter of a mother's memory? Had he failed to share with Lucy the importance of laughter amid sorrow? The regrets that echoed in his mind turned to crystal clarity in the silence of her room. He was not just grieving a loss. He had been shaping the landscape of her memories, including the absence that haunted them both, and then the realization struck him with brutal force. Here in these letters lay an opportunity, a bridge to Lucy's present self, a way to connect the lost days of her childhood with the uncertain future that loomed over them. But the question pulled at him like a persistent itch. Was he ready to face the truths buried beneath their surface? Would he dare to expose himself to the pain and joy that these letters encapsulated? He glanced over at Lucy, who stood just outside the door, her silhouette framed in an unsteady light. It was a moment rife with tension. He could see her unease mirrored in the way she clutched a ragged stuffed animal, a relic of her childhood. A surge of urgency swept over him. He needed to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. But would she even want to? "Lucy," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "I found some letters." She didn't move, her expression unreadable. He gestured, the letters trembling slightly in his hand. "They're from your mom. I think we could read them together." With that, Jack's heart raced. Not only for the vulnerability of exposing their family's past, but for the possibility of healing they so desperately needed. Silence stretched between them, riddled with unspoken fears and hopes, until finally Lucy stepped forward. Her resolve was brittle but essential. She reached for a letter, and in that brief moment, Jack sensed a flicker of connection igniting. As they sat side by side, he turned the first letter over, feeling the weight of its words press upon them like a heavy cloak. Lucy's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the delicate handwriting, her own journey mirroring the tales her mother had inscribed so long ago. Jack watched her expression morph from confusion to a tentative understanding. They were both grappling with more than just memories. They were awakening their emotional landscapes, to face grief, hope, and the specter of the past that would not fade away. Silently. "Is this what you wanted?" she asked hesitantly, glancing up at him, vulnerability flashing through her eyes. Jack opened his mouth to respond, but found no easy words, only the weight of an uncharted territory lying before them. As the sun dipped lower, filtering golden light across the room, Jack realized their journey together had only just begun. He could not fix everything, nor should he strive to. What lay ahead was a labyrinth of emotion, a raw, unfiltered understanding of each other. It would be a long road, but perhaps it was a path worth taking. Just as he opened the next letter, a knock echoed from the front door. It was a jarring sound amidst their fragile moment, pulling at the seams of their newfound connection. Jack's heart sank. He already knew the cost of ignoring the door. Whoever disrupted this delicate balance could send Lucy retreating back into herself. It was time he faced more than old letters. Perhaps real confrontation awaited him beyond those walls. Would he continue to insulate Lucy from the world? Or would he finally steep himself in the unknown? The knocking persisted, relentless and firm. It seeped into the room like an unwelcome intruder, threatening to dismantle the fragile bond that Jack and Lucy were slowly piecing together. Just as Jack had committed to confronting buried emotions, the world outside forced its way in, awakening every doubt and anxiety that plagued him. He glanced at Lucy, who was still staring at the letter, the edges crinkling in her tight grip. Her wide eyes darted towards the door, then back to him, seeking assurance. For a moment, Jack felt an urge to ignore the disruptor, to wrap the two of them in a protective cocoon of shared stories and emotions. But the door could not be ignored. "I'll be right back," he murmured, the words laden with a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. He stood up, his knees feeling momentarily feeble, but his resolve solidified. As he walked to the door, Jack scrutinized himself, uncertain of what lay beyond. Opening the door revealed David, Lucy's school principal. an unexpected chaos of authority and concern. His brow was furrowed, and he stepped into the home with an awkward energy that suggested urgency. "Jack, we need to talk. It's about Lucy." A plume of panic flared in Jack's chest. Instinctively, he glanced over his shoulder, but Lucy remained still, absorbed in the letter, oblivious to the encroaching tension. "Is everything all right?" Jack forced himself to sound composed, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. David's expression shifted, and for a moment, Jack sensed the weight of heavy truths trembling on the edge of his lips. "We've received some concerning reports," he started gently, but there was a hardness in his gaze that didn't match his tone. "Lucy has been spending a lot of time alone at school. They're saying things are happening, things that could put her at risk." The words hung in the air, sharp and unsettling. Jack's mind raced, piecing together the implications. Had Lucy slipped through cracks he hadn't noticed? For months he'd been focused on protecting her from the past, and in doing so, had he inadvertently exposed her to new dangers? "What do you mean? What have you heard?" Jack asked, his heart thudding louder now, each beat driving a new concern into his gut. "Some kids have been teasing her, and recently, she's been seen with a different crowd. I'm worried. She needs support, especially with everything she's going through." As David spoke, Jack felt something shift within him, a blend of guilt and determination. His instincts screamed at him to shield Lucy from the world, to keep her in the safe confines of their home. But that very isolation could be her undoing. Jack took a step back, suddenly aware of the space between him and Lucy, a chasm of unspoken truths. This wasn't merely about her mother's letters. It was about Jack facing the possibility of failure as a parent. "Lucy," he called out, his voice steady yet pleading. "Come here for a second." He needed her to see this too. He needed her to sense the urgency of connecting with the world outside their small bubble. Lucy appeared in the doorway, letter in hand. Her confusion mingled with the shadow of uncertainty that David had cast over their gathering. "Jack?" she asked quietly, looking back and forth between them, a fragile bridge forming between dread and understanding. Jack steeled himself, knowing this was a pivotal moment, not just for her, but for them both. He began to piece together his thoughts, the need to fortify their connection against the turbulence brewing outside. "David's here to help us understand what's going on in school," Jack began, his voice rising with determination. "But we need your help too, Lucy. Can we talk about what's been happening with your friends?" As Lucy's eyes widened, the question hung in the air. Would she retreat into silence, the fear of the unknown pressing her deeper into isolation? Or would she rise to meet the challenge? The answer could set them on an entirely new path towards awakening their coexistence. In that moment, Jack felt as if he was teetering on the edge of not just fathoming his daughter's world, but also discovering his potential as a father. Little did he know, this conversation was merely the beginning. As darkness encroached on their home, something profound awaited to surface. An unraveling that could fundamentally alter the course of their lives. What would Lucy reveal? And what hidden truths would come to light? Jack's heart raced as he witnessed the moment hang in the balance. Lucy's gaze flickered between him and David, the weight of unspoken fears anchoring both of them. The fragile filaments of their relationship glimmered under the dim light, thick with potential and vulnerability. Jack's urgency intensified. "Lucy, please," Jack urged, pain threading through his voice. "We can't protect each other if we don't understand what's happening." Silence enveloped the room, thick enough to suffocate. Jack clenched his fists, desperately fighting the internal dread that threatened to pull him under. He knew that to embrace this turmoil meant both he and Lucy would have to pull apart the seams of their isolation. Finally, Lucy took a hesitant step forward, a fragile resolve shimmering in her wide eyes. I didn't want to tell you," she stammered, nearly losing her voice. "It started in gym class. Some kids. They started saying things." Jack felt a tightening in his chest. It was a beginning. A tremor of honesty, sparking hope. "What did they say?" he prompted gently, keeping his voice soft yet insistent. "They called me names. They said I'm weird for being different, for liking things other kids don't." Her cheeks flushed, a stark contrast to the vulnerable strength she was starting to display. "I didn't want you to worry. I thought maybe it would just go away." Jack struggled to process this revelation. Each word she spoke unveiled layers of disappointments and struggles he hadn't known. He realized he'd been too consumed with the weight of their past to see the minor fractures forming in the present. "Lucy, it's okay. I'm here. You're not alone," he soothed, attempting to reach her through the heaviness that cloaked their interactions. Yet the determination behind his words felt tentative, shadowed by their shared fears that were now spilling into the open. David, observing the exchange, interjected. "Lucy, your father's right. We can tackle this together. It's crucial to address these challenges head-on. Let's think about how we can support you through this." There was a softness in his approach that seemed to resonate with Lucy, as if that small shift of authority could hold a key to her unguarded heart. Jack's mind raced. He envisioned tackling this head-on, crafting strategies to help Lucy feel safe and empowered. "Would you like to take part in a school club? Something that encourages sharing and creativity? It could help you meet other kids who feel the same way. We could explore different activities together." Lucy hesitated, her brow furrowed in contemplation. The combatants of anxiety and curiosity played across her features. Suddenly, her uncertainty ignited something deeper within Jack, a resolve to take action instead of merely reacting. "Lucy, if you find a community that appreciates you for you, it could be a way to connect with those who understand," he said, carefully leaning into her fears. "You have strengths, talents that I see in you. It's time to shine a light on them." As he spoke, Jack felt a flicker of pride for her burgeoning strength, and he silently questioned if he, too, was becoming someone different. Someone willing to confront silence with assertiveness, willing to guide Lucy without suffocating her bloom. The moment crackled with tension as Lucy seemed to wrestle with the invitation, and Jack waited, heart pounding in anticipation. Then her response arrived like a long-awaited breath. Maybe I could try that." Hope surged within Jack, invigorating his resolve. They wouldn't just be navigating the dangers of the world separately. They could forge a path together. Still, as Lucy began to open herself up to the idea, a nagging doubt lingered in Jack's mind. What if these attempts didn't shield them from deeper issues lurking beneath the surface? Would these efforts be enough to save them from the very thing that threatened to tear them apart? And just as Jack was ready to explore these thoughts, a loud crash echoed from the other room, freezing him. In their moment of tentative progress, external chaos threatened to shatter the newfound connection they had begun to forge. What awaited them in the shadows? The loud crash reverberated through the house, pulling Jack's focus away from Lucy. Anxiety surged again, the momentary victory of their dialogue bitterly overshadowed. He turned, instinctively seeking the source of the disturbance. "What was that?" he asked, urgency spiking his voice. David rushed towards the door leading to the adjoining room. "Stay here," he ordered, but Jack felt an impulsive drive to follow. He needed to shield Lucy from whatever chaos lurked beyond. As David pushed the door open, Jack caught a glimpse of the scattered remnants of his daughter's artwork. Papers fluttering like frantic birds, some crumpled while others lay face down, their messages hidden. He stepped forward, compelled not only to protect Lucy, but also to confront whatever reality threatened their fragile progress. "Lucy, stay close," he urged softly, noticing her instinctively inching towards him, her expression one of mixed trepidation and curiosity. Something gnawed at Jack. The sense of chaos felt more than a mere accident. "Dad, what if it's just my art supplies?" Lucy asked, her voice barely above a whisper, a hint of vulnerability creeping back. "It could be," Jack replied, though his tone betrayed a flicker of doubt. "But we should check." They followed David into the room, a strange blend of dread and anticipation coiling in Jack's stomach. The sight that awaited them was disheartening. The shattered remnants of a long-forgotten easel lay amidst a scattered constellation of paint tubes and brushes. I didn't mean to leave that there," Lucy said, her words heavy with regret as she knelt to gather the remnants. Jack's heart raced. Here in her workspace, perhaps even in her creative sanctuary, lay proof of her struggles, both internal and external. He crouched beside her, absorbing the disarray. It mirrored their chaotic existence, the mixture of beauty and tumult. "Lucy, this—" He hesitated. "This shows your passion, your dedication." She lifted her gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just wanted to make something beautiful. I thought no one cared." Jack's heart sank at her words, struck by the realization that her self-imposed isolation mirrored his own. "I care," he asserted, determination lacing each syllable. "We will get through this, but you have to believe in the beauty you create. If we're going to make progress, you need to show us your work. We can celebrate that together." "Together?" Lucy repeated, uncertainty creeping into the edges of her voice. "Yes," Jack affirmed, feeling a newfound depth in his commitment. "It's not just about addressing the chaos. It's about valuing everything that exists within it, especially you." As they cleaned up the mess, a tightening feeling coursed through Jack. Creature comforts in his life, the facade of control he'd clung to, felt tenuous. The challenge ahead seemed monumental. How to shelter Lucy from her fears, while also allowing her the space to flourish. David finally emerged from the side, a frown creasing his brow. "We need to talk," he said, voice steady but low. "About what happened before. It's serious." Jack looked at Lucy, worry gaining hold once more. The atmosphere shifted as uncertainty hung oppressively in the air. Whatever had been brewing beyond their dialogue threatened to spill into their lives once more. The fractured peace they had started to cultivate now felt precarious. Should he dig deeper into these potential truths, or focus solely on supporting Lucy in this fragile moment? Decisions loomed heavy like storm clouds, each charged with the electricity of unresolved tensions and hidden battles. Yet another loud noise came from downstairs, jarring him from his thoughts. A voice, faint but unmistakable, echoed from below. "Help! Someone!" The urgency rattled through Jack, igniting a fierce determination that propelled him toward the door. Lucy clutched his arm, fear etching across her young face. Jack met her gaze, a shared resolve passing between them. "We have to go. We're getting through this together." As they moved toward the noise, Jack's heart raced, filled with dread and determination. The secret chaos was unfolding, but also, maybe, a hidden path to understanding. Behind thin walls and broken art lay a truth just waiting to be revealed. What would they discover that might shatter old fears? And could it possibly illuminate a way forward? Jack's pulse quickened as he descended the stairs, each step driven by the urgency of the voice echoing through the house. Fear gripped him tightly, but a burgeoning determination enkindled his heart. What lay ahead in the dimly lit corridor seemed more than just an unknown crisis. It felt like a crucible for change. "Stay behind me no matter what," he murmured to Lucy, glancing back to check her presence before gathering the courage to confront whatever awaited them. Her eyes, wide and glistening with uncertainty, grounded his focus, reminding him why he was pushing through the chaos. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, the source of the cry became clearer. A muffled sobbing came from the laundry room. Jack exchanged a wary glance with David, who stood stiff and tense, a silent agreement passing between them. They approached the door cautiously, the threshold between safety and the unknown. "Who's there?" Jack called out, steeling his voice, though it trembled slightly. "Please help me," the voice responded, a child's frightened tone that pierced Jack's heart. It was a plea for not just assistance, but for safety. Jack glanced back at Lucy, who now stood close, her small fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt tightly. He could feel the weight of her fear, but also the flickers of resilience in her gaze, a reflection of his own struggle to rise above the inner turbulence that had long held him captive. David, resolute, led the way, swinging the door open. The small room was dim, the flickering light overhead revealing a girl, no older than Lucy, hunched in a corner. Her tear-stained cheeks glistened as she looked up. Jack's instinct beckoned him forward, but he had to consider the safety of everyone involved. "Are you all right?" Jack asked, kneeling down to her level, attempting to make his tone soft, yet reassuring. "I'm lost. I don't know how I got here." The voice trembled, raw and filled with confusion. Jack felt a pang of empathy wash over him. He recognized that feeling too well, the sense of being adrift among tumultuous waves. "You're safe now. What's your name?" he inquired, attempting to soothe not just the girl but also the storm brewing within him. "Emily," she whispered, her body shaking slightly. As he listened to Emily's fragmented story, Jack's mind raced. Why was she here? How had she come to find herself lost behind closed doors? The urgency of the moment pushed against his sense of personal safety, urging him to stretch further into vulnerability. Here was a child, echoing Lucy's own fears. Stark reminders that their struggles were not theirs alone. Turning back to Lucy, Jack saw her wide-eyed, processing the scene unfolding before her. In that moment, he recognized that he wasn't merely a father trying to shield his daughter. He was also a guide, navigating uncharted waters of compassion and understanding right alongside her. "Lucy, let's help her. She needs us." The words came out more resolutely than he felt, imbued with conviction he hoped would resonate. As they helped Emily to her feet, her trembling subsided, if only slightly, under the reassuring weight of Jack and Lucy's presence. They exchanged glances, an unspoken connection forming in the bonds of shared trauma. Yet as they stepped out of the laundry room, the remnants of uncertainty began to creep back. What had led this young girl to their home? What dangers still lurked beyond the edges of their fractured lives? The chaos that surrounded them appeared insurmountable again. But this time, Jack felt a flicker of strength in the unity they formed. "Jack!" David's voice pulled him from his thoughts, urgency replacing the newfound calm. "We have to figure out what happened. This isn't just about us anymore." The implication hung heavy in the air. There were bigger shadows to navigate, larger truths to unravel. "I'll do whatever it takes," Jack replied, the resolve in his voice matching the determination he felt tightening within him. "For Lucy, for Emily. We have to find out what's really going on." With that, they moved forward, hearts pounding and intentions clear, ready to uncover the terrifying questions lying just beneath the surface. What truths would emerge from this tangled web of fears and forgotten connections? And could they find the strength to face them together? Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself against the turmoil bubbling inside him as he guided Lucy and Emily out of the laundry room. The unfamiliar girl's frail frame seemed to blend with the shadows of the house, casting a spotlight on the disorienting reality they faced. How many other lost souls roamed amidst the chaos of their lives? This question gnawed at him, pushing him into a space of reflection he had long evaded. As they re-entered the dimly lit corridor, Jack's mind began to step through the disarray, threads of determination weaving through its fog. He had already lived a life of retreat, plagued by doubt and despair. But this encounter, the plea from a lost child, tore down the wall he'd built, calling him to become more than a bystander. "Emily," he said, releasing the tension in his shoulders enough to address her directly. "Can you describe where you last saw your home? Anything that might help us understand how you got here?" There was a sense of urgency in his voice, but also a depth of kindness he hoped she could feel. The girl blinked back tears, collecting herself. "I was playing at the park. Then I saw something shiny. I went to get it, and when I turned back, everything was different. I didn't know how to get back." Her voice cracked, and Jack felt both a pang of sorrow and an awakening of responsibility deep within him. Lucy, still by Jack's side, squeezed his hand tighter, her worry palpable. He admired her strength, realizing she was growing through this experience too, learning courage, compassion, and resilience. "Lucy, why don't you stay with Emily for a moment? Make sure she feels safe." It was a subtle shift in dynamics, where Jack had once solely been protector. Now he saw value in empowering his daughter to be part of the solution. As they all settled into a small nook in the hallway, Jack's mind reverted to David, who had remained quiet and observant. "We need to inspect the house further," Jack instructed, taking the lead. "There may be clues about what happened to Emily that we can uncover. David, can you check upstairs? I'll stay here with the girls." David hesitated, the tension evident in his stiff posture. "What if there's someone else involved? I don't want to leave you guys unprotected." Jack recognized the underlying fear in David's voice, but sensed an opportunity to affirm their collaboration. "If we don't take calculated risks, we will never find out the truth. We're in this together. Go, but stay alert." As David nodded and headed towards the staircase, Jack turned his full attention back to Emily and Lucy. "Emily, can you tell me anything else? Anyone who might have been with you? Anything else you saw? Even the smallest detail might help." She hesitated momentarily, then stammered. "There was a man. He was watching me play, but I thought he was just a visitor. He looked odd, like something was off." A chill crept through Jack's spine. Words like odd carried weight. "What do you mean by off?" he pressed, carefully monitoring Lucy's reaction. "I don't know," Emily whispered. He had a grin that felt wrong. Jack's pulse quickened. This was no mere coincidence. He needed to piece together every element of this fragmented situation to shield his family from whatever darkness lay ahead. Suddenly the house creaked ominously, the silence broken only by the sound of their collective breaths. Jack felt it, a growing sense of urgency, the need to act before the infiltrating shadows tightened their grip. He was no longer just a parent. He was a protector stepping into an unfamiliar realm, facing not only external dangers but the ghosts of his own past that threatened to resurface. "Let's figure this out," he declared with newfound vigor, leaning into the promise of personal growth that coursed through him. "No more hiding. Together, we're stronger." As he spoke, a familiar sense of resolve began to settle around him like armor. The bigger confrontation lay ahead, but for now, they would tackle the immediate threat as a unit, which meant confronting fears, asking difficult questions, and embracing the unknown. In that moment, Jack recognized the transformative power of compassion and vulnerability. Not just for Emily, but for himself and Lucy. The foundation of their relationship was shifting toward empowerment, and he knew profound changes were just on the horizon. Yet just as they started to move forward, David's voice echoed from the upper floor. "Jack, you need to see this!" With that, Jack felt a tight knot form in his stomach. There were hidden truths waiting to be uncovered, and the time had come to face whatever they were together. Would they be strong enough to confront the shadows? Or would the weight of the past bring their transformed bonds crashing down? Jack felt the knot in his stomach tighten as he absorbed David's urgent call from above. A rush of adrenaline surged through him, yet a creeping sense of uncertainty lingered at the edges of his consciousness. He glanced at Lucy, who pursed her lips, instinctively sensing the gravity of the moment, and at Emily, whose eyes shimmered with fear. It was a call to action, but also a reminder of the fragility of the safety they had just forged in their emerging alliance. "Stay here, both of you," Jack instructed firmly, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The weight of his role pressed down on him. He was a father, but also now a guardian against something foreign and sinister. With a deep breath, he pushed through the doorway to the staircase. As he ascended, Jack's thoughts raced through the tapestry of his own life, an intertwining of regret and longing. He had often felt helpless, a spectator to his own existence as he retreated from the chaos of the world and numbed himself to the deeper connections around him. Yet here, his heart beat for more than survival. Each step he climbed ignited a spark of determination. This was no longer a life marked by fear, but one where accountability mattered. Upon reaching the top, he found David standing in a small, dim room filled with dust and shadows. The air felt thick, as if holding its breath. "What did you find?" Jack asked, the urgency in his voice palpable. David stepped aside, revealing a faded rug in the center of the room. "I don't know. There's something underneath." He crouched down and lifted the corner, revealing a faint outline. Something jagged, protruding from the floor. Jack's heart sank. As he approached, a familiar sense of dread gnawed at him, whispering that this moment might unveil not only secrets about the missing girl, but truths about himself he had long avoided. He knelt beside David, both of them resetting the narrative from passive observers to active detectives in the saga of their lives. With slow determination, they pulled the rug fully aside, revealing a small trapdoor beneath. A slim chain lock held it fast, but it felt symbolic, like a long-held barrier against the haunting realities they were about to face. Jack's breath caught. The imagery mirrored his own past. Locked away, parts of him buried like debris under years of avoidance. "We need to open it," David stated, resolute yet wary, mirroring the inner conflict Jack felt. This was a moment of confrontation, not just with whatever lay beneath the trapdoor, but also within themselves. Jack swallowed hard, wrestling with the instinct to retreat projected from the past. "Let's do it," he responded, angling his resolve towards the unknown. Together they worked to unfasten the lock, hands trembling with anticipation mingled with dread. The sound of the lock releasing echoed off the barren walls, a culmination of tension bursting forth, as if every silent scream had finally found its voice. Jack opened the door, the creaking hinges seeming to lament the long concealment of whatever darkness resided within. Peering into the dark void below, a frigid gust of air rushed up to meet them, carrying a hint of earthiness and something else, something foreboding. Jack's heart thundered in his chest. In this very instant he understood. He was not only confronting external threats, but delving into his own hidden fears, the parts of himself he had shunned for far too long. "What's down there?" David murmured, the two of them suspended on a precipice of discovery, staring into the abyss. Jack felt a surge of clarity, a defiant whisper breaking through the chaos. This was his moment. He was no longer defined by what he had avoided. Now, he would take control of the narrative. With his pulse racing, he said, "We need to find out." In that moment, the tangled web of his emotional past began to unravel. What he uncovered would not just affect their present, but shape their very futures, painting their story anew. As determination solidified within him, Jack realized the gravity of the choice ahead. Would they descend into the darkness together, armed with newfound courage? Or would the shadows that dwelt therein consume them whole? "I'll go first," Jack asserted, stepping to confront whatever lay beneath, driven by a latent strength waiting to rise, a stark contrast to the man he'd been. But as he prepared to descend, an unsettling thought raced through his mind. What if confronting this truth meant losing everything he had fought to protect? Jack's heart pounded not merely from fear of the unknown, but from an exhilaration he hadn't felt in years. He was standing on a threshold between who he had been, a man paralyzed by indecision, and a man ready to face the tumult of truth. As he braced himself against the doorframe, the world above faded into a distant memory, and the shadows below pulled at him like a siren's call. He descended with caution, one step at a time, the creaking stair beneath him resonating as a metronome to his rising resolve. David followed closely, a grounding presence that reminded him they were not alone in this journey. The air grew colder, thick with anticipation, and a smell, a mix of damp earth and something akin to decay, stung his nostrils. What awaited them at the bottom of the stairs felt like a reckoning. Was it merely their search for the missing girl, or was it about uncovering the darker parts of their own psyches? Jack felt the line between the two blur, his own neglected fears wrestling for his consciousness. As they reached the bottom, a dim light flashed from David's flashlight, illuminating disarrayed boxes that hinted at past lives abandoned. "Look," David whispered, pointing toward the far side. A series of old crates stacked precariously bore labels, marking names of individuals Jack recognized from the past. People he had once trusted, now draped in the shroud of betrayal. Panic gripped him as he thought about connections, lies, and the threads that had led to this moment. "Should we check them?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jack hesitated. The decision loomed larger than ever. This was more than just digging into old boxes. Each crate represented decisions he had accepted, moments he had brushed aside, and trust he had misplaced. "We have to," he finally said, his voice steady, a manifesto of sorts. It was his way of acknowledging that in confronting the past, he could salvage his present and future. They began to open boxes. Each with peeling tape and the smell of antiquity contained fragments of conversations, letters and objects that threaded Jack's life into a tapestry of missed connections and neglected truths. He unearthed a pair of baby shoes wrapped in a tattered blanket, pieces of what felt like an ethereal echo of his past, driving a chill down his spine. This not only defined a childhood lost, but his own escapism from responsibility. "Jack, look at this." David's voice broke through the fog of his thoughts. He stretched his hand toward a box at the very back, with a rusty lock, its stern presence paralyzing. What if this is it? The box felt like a heavy weight on his chest, a manifestation of his anxieties. "We open it," Jack said. His voice bore the weight of realization. What lay inside might unveil long-sought answers, but it may also lay bare unsettling truths about himself. As he fumbled for a way to open it, a piece of him realized. This moment was met with a steep price. Fingers trembling, he managed to pry the lock open, and as it popped free, the lid creaked ominously. The contents spilled out into the light. A scrapbook filled with photographs of the missing girl, and notes scrawled in a recognizable hand. Jack's stomach churned. These weren't just notes. They detailed observations like some sick personal dossier. He felt time stutter as he wrestled with the looming dread of what this meant. Had he stumbled onto something beyond mere disappearance? Mind racing, he glanced over at David, whose expression mirrored his turmoil, shifting from curiosity to horror. "Who did this?" David asked, a quiver lurking behind the strength of his voice. Jack closed his eyes briefly, shifting his focus inward. "Someone who knew her," he murmured, the gears of realization clicking together in his mind. Every word he read felt like a dagger. tearing his resolve and wrapping it in ice. Within that moment of frozen uncertainty, an unsettling notion crept into Jack's mind. Not only was he driven by a desperate need to find his daughter, but he was awakening to the monsters he had kept at bay for too long. The deeper he delved into this dark reality, the clearer his responsibility became. This was no longer just about rescue. It was about facing the fractured soul he had become. And as he studied the notes, a haunting query echoed in his mind. What if uncovering these secrets meant confronting demons not just buried in the dark, but alive within himself? The shadows around them thickened as Jack studiously prepared himself for the revelations to come. But just as he began to grasp the gravity of the situation, the crackle of a breaking branch echoed from above, pulling them back to the present. A stark reminder that their sanctuary might still not be safe. What was that? David sounded alarmed, scanning the darkness. Jack's anxiety shifted into urgent determination. They would need to fortify not only against the external threats, but also against the tempest of truths that were spiraling out of control. He took a deep breath, ready to tackle whatever came next. "We need to move. Now," he commanded, the stakes escalating, and the darkness waiting for them. As Jack and David scrambled up from the floor, adrenaline surged through their veins, propelling them toward the door. The urgency pulsed not only with the echoes of the crashing outside, but also the weight of the secrets unearthed within the boxes below. Jack could feel the tight knot of unresolved questions coiling inside him, growing taut as they prepared to confront whatever awaited them above. Pushing past the trapdoor, he turned to Lucy and Emily, both children illuminated under the unsteady beam of David's flashlight. "Stay close," he instructed, feeling not just the role of a protector rise within him, but also an empowered father, a man ready for confrontation, ready to tackle the truth that lay ahead. The house creaked ominously as they returned to the main living area, shadows pooling into corners like dark thoughts that threatened to swallow them whole. As they stepped hesitantly into the light, Jack's chest tightened. The confrontation outside felt inevitable. The world that had seemed safe moments ago now felt like a stage set for upheaval, but Lucy, her presence strong and grounding, stepped forward at his side. "Dad, what's happening?" she asked, concern furrowing her brows. Jack felt the weight of her question, a palpable reminder of their shared connection and responsibility. This was no longer just about managing fears and external threats. It was about them coming together to face not only the unknown, but one another. "Remember the letters," Jack said, pulling strength from the memory of discovery. "They remind us that we can face it all together. It's time to show that courage, Lucy." He turned to Emily, who stood next to Lucy, visibly trembling yet intrigued by the profound exchange of stories that had occurred since they first met. "And that means all of us. We're stronger together." As the echoes grew louder from outside, curiosity ignited in Jack's heart. What could be waiting for them? Was it merely danger, or was it an opportunity for growth? The door swung open suddenly under the pressure of wind, and a familiar face appeared. David re-entered, wide-eyed and breathless. "We need to get out! Now!" "What?" Confusion crackled in the air. "A group of kids. There's something wrong. They're struggling. They need help." David's urgency cut through Jack's internal chaos, sharpening his focus on the reality that unfolded outside. Whatever had drawn Lucy into her silence was now echoed in a larger narrative, one where help was desperately needed. Taking a moment to process, Jack grabbed Lucy and Emily's hands, anchoring them. "We can't back away now. This could be the chance to confront what's out there. Together." They headed outside, emerging into a swirling chaos. A cluster of children huddled together, their faces streaked with confusion and fear, mirroring the experiences Jack and Lucy had faced. Stories were unfolding, desperate cries echoing for understanding. Standing in the presence of frightened faces, Jack felt the tether that bound them as individuals transform into a collective force of compassion. "Listen up, everyone," Jack called, his voice finding strength amidst the clamor. "We're here to help you. You can trust us. Let's talk together. What's been going on?" The children turned their gazes toward Jack, their collective uncertainty slowly shifting. One brave girl stepped forward, her voice wavering. Some of the kids make fun of us. They say we're weird. I thought I was alone." Empathy washed over Jack, echoing the struggles he had faced, layers of fear weighing heavily on his heart. Yet, here he was, together with Lucy, together with Emily, and now with a community of shared experiences. "There's strength in our differences," Jack asserted, speaking both to the children and to Lucy. His voice rang with newfound confidence. "What if we create a space where we can all express ourselves? We can take that power back." Lucy stepped beside him, her spirit awakened. "I love to draw. It makes me feel free. I want to help us believe in ourselves again." As Jack watched her speak, pride burgeoned within him. She was no longer the lost girl who faded into silence. She would become a voice for others who felt unheard, a bridge to understanding. That day, as they gathered around with their new allies, laughter and creativity filled the once subdued air. The backyard transformed into a makeshift art space, colors blending together and hands moving in celebration of shared stories. Jack felt the ache of past fears dissolving into bright strokes of possibility. He realized in that moment of connection that they hadn't just helped others. They were helping themselves. Each brushstroke and each hesitant laugh became a building block for their renewal. A path marked with joy amidst the remnants of pain. And as sunlight danced in the chaotic skies, a new season unveiled itself. An awakening where Jack, finally, could breathe freely. Their bond had strengthened in ways he had never anticipated. They were not merely a father and daughter navigating trauma, but a united force sculpting hope through their artful creation. It was here that Jack understood. The transformation he sought for Lucy was also the transformation he needed for himself. He had stepped outside his isolation, and in doing so had discovered the beauty that lay hidden within vulnerability. Their journey wasn't complete, but already he felt solid confidence rising from his soul, a recognition of both their shared strengths and a future that shimmered before them. As they painted together, Jack took in every detail, cementing that moment of fulfillment within him. An achievement encapsulated in colors that vibrated against a canvas of unity. He had conquered isolation, nurturing connection against darkness. A heart that once felt like an anchor was now alive, tethered to purpose and the promise of new beginnings. In the laughter that echoed around him and the smiles that painted the children's faces, Jack discovered something profound. He was no longer merely a participant in his family's narrative. He was forging an enduring legacy woven in love, resilience, and artistic expression. As the sun dipped low in the horizon, casting a warm glow upon the world, Jack looked at Lucy. Their eyes locked, and he saw in her a reflection of everything they had become. The questions that had once haunted him transformed into affirmations of triumph, an evolution he had never imagined possible. They were victorious. Now, it is your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.